You know, for over 4 decades, there's been this one band that's basically made a career out of refusing to be just one band. They're the true chameleons of British rock, these shapeshifters who've done everything from gentle indie pop to, well, furious industrial noise. This is the story of Primal Scream, a band that is all about constant radical transformation.
So let's just start with the central question, the one that really defines their entire career. How does a band that starts out sounding like this?
You know, a really gentle, jangly indie band from Glasgow in the mid-'80s. They were part of that whole C86 scene, known for this kind of twee, lo-fi sound. They were talented, sure, but they were also a little bit lost, kind of searching for who they were supposed to be. How do you get from that to this? I mean, a swaggering, globe-trotting, stadium-filling rock act that just refused to be defined by any single sound. The journey between these 2 points is honestly one of the most fascinating stories in modern music.
To really understand that journey, we've got to start right at their absolute peak. I'm talking about the moment that changed everything, not just for them, but for British music as a whole.
The critics at the time, they got it immediately. They knew how important this was. This quote from Inkblot magazine just nails the album's magic. It was the absolute sound of 1991, but at the same time, it sounds like it could have been released yesterday. And right at the center of this whole storm was the frontman, Bobby Gillespie. Here he is in 1991, the year his band took the indie scene, threw it in a blender with the whole acid house and rave culture that was exploding, and somehow created an absolute masterpiece.
The album's impact was just colossal. Seriously, it wasn't just a record, it was a cultural event. It merged two completely different tribes, the indie kids and the ravers. It won the very first Mercury Music Prize, a huge deal, and it shot the band into the top 10. It really did become the soundtrack for a generation searching for a bit of euphoria.
But that massive triumph, it didn't just come out of nowhere. To really appreciate Screamadelica, we need to hit rewind and take a look at just how lost the band was only a few years before.
This kind of lays out the problem perfectly. Their first album, Sonic Flower Groove, was this polite jangle pop that critics called pristine but dull. Ouch. So, they reacted by making a self-titled follow-up that had a harder rock sound, and that was just labeled Confused. They were alienating everyone, including themselves.
By the end of the 80s, Primal Scream was pretty much on the verge of collapse. They had no clear identity, their records weren't selling, and they were confusing the few fans they had left. Creatively, they were completely adrift.
And then, a happy accident, a single moment of chance and inspiration that would basically provide the blueprint for their entire future.
So the band gave a DJ, this guy Andrew Weatherall, one of their slow, sad ballads to remix. Now, Weatherall was a genius in the acid house scene, and he just completely tore it apart. He kept almost none of the original song, and instead he added a drum loop, some vocal samples, and that iconic movie dialogue intro. The result was Loaded, an absolutely ecstatic dance anthem that became a huge hit, and well, it showed the band the way forward.
Now, most bands would have taken that winning formula and just repeated it for years and years, but Primal Scream, they did the exact opposite. Screamadelica wasn't the endpoint for them, it was permission to do whatever the hell they wanted next.
So, come 1994, they just abandoned the dance beats entirely. They went to Memphis, hired the legendary Muscle Shoals rhythm section, and made a straight-up Rolling Stone-style classic rock record. It was full of this bluesy swagger and soul horns. Critics called them dance traders, but the band was already moving on.
3 years later, another hard left turn. Vanishing Point was this dark, paranoid, super cinematic album. The sound was built on these heavy, echoing bass lines pulled right out of Jamaican dub, the hazy, looping textures of trip-hop, and these big washes of psychedelic guitar noise. It was the complete opposite of the sunny rock album that came right before it.
And then, right at the turn of the millennium, came XTRMNR. It's just a furious, political, and incredibly aggressive record. It channels all this anti-corporate rage into something that sounds like a machine gun going off in a nightclub. It was a pure blast of distorted industrial noise rock.
And they just kept going. To date, they have released 12 studio albums, and each one is its own distinct sonic world. You've got euphoric pop, bluesy rock, experimental electronica. They have never, ever made the same album twice.
So what's the thread that holds all this chaos together? I mean, how does a band with this much change and turmoil manage to survive for over 40 years? Well, just look at the turnover here. Over 20 different musicians have been official members of Primal Scream. The only constant, the one anchor through all the sonic shifts and all the lineup changes, is Bobby Gillespie. It's less of a band and more of a collective that just revolves around his singular vision.
And that vision has always had a confrontational side. The band has courted controversy throughout their career, from altering charity posters to support the Palestinian cause to using some really provocative and controversial imagery in their live shows. They've always maintained their goal is to provoke thought and debate, not to spread hate.
This timeline really shows their incredible longevity. They formed way back in the early 80s, went through the era-defining highs of the 90s, the political anger of the 2000s, and all the way to a new album in 2024. They have just never stopped moving forward.
And this quote from Bobby Gillespie kind of sums it all up perfectly. For him, rock and roll isn't a sound, it's an attitude. It's the freedom to destroy what you did before and build something totally new in its place. And that, right there, is the core philosophy of Primal Scream.
It really leaves you with a final thought. In an industry that so often rewards just doing the same thing over and over, Primal Scream has thrived on reinvention. It makes you wonder, is their chaotic, restless evolution the secret? Is constant change the only way to truly last?